Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Who wants to do the summary quick? I'm still having how many verses to do. Who wants to do answers? You can. Go ahead.
Okay, we started with, we used a prakriya for Driktrishya Viveka, and one of them was Panchakosha Viveka. So we first described what is Panchakosha. We said first, Anamaya, so this means a body which is composed mainly of food. So basically your body is chapatis and carrots.
Digested.
Then we said Prana Maya Kosha, which means anything pertaining to nutrition, digestion, circulation, or whenever we exercise, we generally worry about improvement of our circulation. Then we said Manomaya Kosha, this is pertaining to emotions. So if we spend our lives trying to manage our emotions, that's okay. However, it becomes a problem because we're then stuck in Manomaya Kosha. Next, Vijnanamaya Kosha, which is two parts. The first is decision making or thinking, but also the ahamkara, correction of this, it's incorrect, is enveloped by the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Can you say that or not?
So yeah, the sense of I am the doer.
I am
So that is correct. I am the doer. I am
the walker. So the I am sense is enveloped by the Vijnanamaya Kosha. Vijnana or Vijnana? Some people say Vijnana.
Not Vidya.
Vijnana. My teacher taught me Vijnana. Vijnana. And then we got the Anandamaya Kosha. In other words, the experiencer. Now, when we say experiencer, Neema, can we say both the enjoyer and the sufferer?
So I will a little bit clarify that.
Okay. So that's the description of the Panchakosha. Next question is, what is the relationship between Atma and the Panchakosha? So we said that the conditions which arise in the respective Panchakosha are not influencing Atma. Why? Because Atma, the self-awareness, is there before the conditions of, for example, the emotions arise. It is still there during the condition is sustained and even after the condition goes away. Next question is, what is the logical means to separate Atma from Panchakosha? And the answer is very beautifully described Karma Yoga, which I liked. And just a quick summary, what does this mean? Whatever is happening, whatever is the condition of each kosha, let it not become the end, but rather the means to what? The means to offering to Ishvara. The question is why? Because Ishvara is in the form of laws and orders, and what is each Panchakosha made of? All knowledge and all power. Therefore, we are only offering it to all knowledge and all power. And I like to leave the rest for someone else. Otherwise, we'll cover it all.
Anybody else? Okay. One thing that I want to clarify, and that is something which is very important, and here Andrew was asking this question that can I call Anandamaya as both the enjoyer and the sufferer? And I think it pertains to Sita Devi's question yesterday, which was a very important question. It was a very discerning question. What did you ask yesterday?
During your talk, I was thinking about if when I'm happy, when I feel happy without a reason, does it come from Manomaya Kosha or Anandamaya Kosha?
Okay, that's a very good question, very discerning question. So let me explain what is the difference between Manomaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha. And in fact, it's a very critical question because that actually leads to Purushartha Nishchaya. So let me show you that. Okay. So as I said, let's do only two. I don't want to put all the koshas. So they are not koshas. They are locus of error. So what does it mean? That because I take myself to be this, I miss the Atma, and this is why this has become covered. By definition, it's not a cover, right? It's a locus of error. That's how it has to be taken. It is not really covered Atma. Okay? So this is what we call the mind, and the mind we defined as all the different emotions, right? And Anandamaya, so Vijnanamaya is what both the decision maker and the doer, this is where the doership is, and Anandamaya is what we call the experiencer. It can mean experiencer, but actually what does this, when I perform an action, I want to experience the result of the action, but what kind of result I want to experience? Do I want to suffer as a result of doing this action? No. What is my intention? So that means behind every action that I perform, I want to be an enjoyer. That's my intention. Right? Nobody works for depression, nobody works for fear, nobody works for sadness. But it just happens, right? This is why you can't give people an advice, be happy. Hey, everybody wants to be happy, but what ends up happening is not exactly quite that. That's our problem, right? So that means, suppose you go to a spiritual leader and they say, yeah, now learn, everything is Ishvara, learn to be happy in every situation. That's what you want. But it doesn't happen like that. So this is why you have to solve the puzzle of life. Therefore, you can't keep, so behind every action that we do, our intention is to be happy and to enjoy. So this is why everybody wants to enjoy life, right? But what ends up happening is what sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm sad, sometimes I'm jealous, sometimes I have fears, sometimes I'm sad, sometimes I'm angry. So that means this Anandamaya Kosha is I perform action for which purpose? Happiness. But what ends up happening is all of this. And actually, this is the critical thing, which is what we saw on the first day, Purushartha Nishchaya. What is the Purushartha Nishchaya? What I want from life and what ends up happening is not matching. So that means I have to now find that what will actually give me the real satisfaction that I am searching for. That whole thing, Purushartha Nishchaya, is here. My purpose of performing action is to enjoy life. But what ends up happening is, what I end up experiencing is all of this. So that means there is something which is wrong. Right? It becomes the basis. Now, as you begin to understand that the source of pleasure is not things of the world, but knowledge of what is, which includes many, many realities, not just, oh, I am the whole. what is Ishvara, it includes everything. Then what happens is, as I transact in the world, I do many things and actually I begin to, as a result of this knowledge, I begin to actually enjoy life. You understand? I come closer and closer to what I'm looking for. And all the other knowledge. So this is why you will see that as a result of Vedanta, whether you get to final reality or not, the quality of your life will improve. Actually, you will begin to get from life what you are really looking for. And this is why people come second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time. Why? Because now their life is getting in order. And this is why now, and that's why when it begins to get in order, this is working well, then your mind can go to the final reality. I and Ishvara are one. So that means now, what is the meaning? You generally become cheerful. What does it mean? This person doesn't constantly need things to be cheerful, because the understanding and clarity begins to give cheerfulness. And this is why it comes closer. So not only Vedanta takes you out of this whole confusion, but within this so-called avidya, you actually, the quality of your life actually begins to improve. Excellent question. It actually got me thinking, and that was a very good question.
So could we say that the Vijnana Maya / Ahankara is a doer for the sake of accessing the pleasure within the Anandamaya kosha? So in other words, can we say that the doer does in order to access pleasure within the Anandamaya kosha?
So that means,
That's
see, let's not
motivation.
say Anandamaya kosha, because what there is an we are doer, right? And then what is the purpose of my doing? Enjoy, right? There is nobody who performs actions for not enjoying life, right? Nobody performs, say, I'm performing this action very seriously in order to be sad. Nobody does that, right? So that means this is our real intention. So that means, why does it become kosha? No, it's just a function of mind. It becomes kosha because our identity stops there. And our identity stops there, and therefore it covers our true nature. That's why it has become kosha. These are not realities, these are just functions, but those functions become kosha for us because they serve as upadhi, they cover the nature of Atma. You understand? So this is why we don't contempt the world, we don't contempt this individuality as such. Itself is a gift. It only becomes a liability because we don't understand reality. Right? So suppose you use this same brain to understand the final reality, it is no longer a kosha. Then it has become your privilege, because it is no longer covering the Atma. In fact, you have used it to figure out what Atma is. And that is what is Karma Yoga. The very faculty which actually causes for you to be stuck here, that very entity is sharpened and used to know reality. Understand? This is the whole trick of Vedanta. The one which is kosha, which covers the nature of Atma, that itself has to be sharpened and used to figure out what is nature of Atma. That is called Karma Yoga. Turning your relationship around. That's why the whole world doesn't become a problem for you. You can actually move freely and you can enjoy it. Yeah? Okay, next verse, which is 24. Prakashaha arthasya toyasya shaityam agnehe yatha ushnata Swabhavaha Satchidananda Nitya Nirmalata Atma. Who wants to read? Yeah, Stefan.
Just like the sun's nature is luminosity, that of water is coolness, and that of fire is heat. So too, the nature of Atma is existence, knowledge, limitless, eternity, and purity.
Okay, so that means this sun doesn't have to do anything. The nature of the sun is luminosity. The nature of fire is heat. So too, the nature of Atma is, what did we see? Up to now, we have seen by itself. So that means, when you study Vedanta, you are not making a limited Atma limitless. Atma is already limitless, and what you are doing is removing your avidya, the ignorance, to know the true nature of Atma. Okay. Now when you use the pramana, in order to remove the ignorance, you need to replace it with knowledge, and any knowledge is gained through means of knowledge. So all these are the logics. So when you listen to the means of knowledge properly, with a competent teacher, you discover that the Atma is not what all I thought it to be. It was existence, it is existence, which is of, this is called Sat. It can have many different names, so just for the definition, because there are synonyms in every language. Awareness, so which is Chit, and itself is, as I said, the first operation we have to do is that the bottle has to be, the space has to be freed from confinement of the bottle and what is inside it, which is the water. Later on, but that's not enough, later on we have to free the space from any relationship with the bottle or the water. You have to give it no location. You have to free it from location. You have to see it as that which pervades everything. So this is why this awareness is what we call limitless. Now, two things are very important. In order to arrive at true limitlessness, we did the first prakriya, which is called druk and drishya. What is drishya world? Everything, which includes time, space, and every object in it. And that object includes your body, your mind, your causal. So that means everything becomes drishya, and there is only one druk which is remaining, which is awareness. Now suppose awareness was totally separate from all of this drishya, will it become limitless? Can you call it limitless? No. Why not? Because limitless means there cannot be two. If there are two things, what happens? Suppose one is very big and the other is small. That small, if it is separate from big, it will limit this one. Limitlessness means that it has to be only one. Two, that means that the second thing limits the other. Logic. So therefore, if all of these enjoy the same reality as awareness, awareness will just become one awareness and everything else will limit awareness. It may be separate from everything else, but it will still limit it. Do you understand? So limitless means that there cannot be real two categories. So what does it mean? That the relationship between druk and drishya is not two separate categories. This is mithya and this is satya. That's the only way. This has a dependent reality and this has a independent reality. So this is the only way you can establish limitlessness. Otherwise you can't. Okay? So that means there are two names, what? Pot and clay. But in reality, if you look at the reality, there is only clay. So this is how every form that I see resolves into forms within forms, within forms, within forms. Ultimately, knowledge and power. And the truth of knowledge and power is awareness. So that means none of this can exist without awareness, but awareness is independently existing of all of this. So there are no real addition. Please don't use Vedanta to say this is form plus form plus form plus form plus Ishvara is equal to awareness. There are no pluses. The forms are added, but in terms of substance, nothing is added. This is what we call limitlessness. Right? So you can see many forms. You don't have to destroy forms to understand this. So, what is a relationship? Satyam pervades whole of mithya, but is free from ego mithya. So this is how this is where the Shruti tells one more thing. Brahma Satyam or Atma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Because that is the relationship, therefore Atma becomes limitless. Otherwise it cannot become limitless. Okay? Now the next word which is used, which is pure. It is true because all the attributes are actually here. The attributes cannot be given to the awareness. There are attributes. We are not denying the attributes, but the locus of attributes is forms. And this is why one form is different from the other form. But those are attributes of drishya, they don't belong to druk. So that is why we say it is pure. Pure doesn't mean that it is something generally in colloquial language. It means suppose something is pure but it can become contaminated. Here there is no possibility. Why? Because this is attribute free. And that attribute free awareness is from which all the forms, all the attributes come. Okay. Now there is one more word used which is called nitya. What is nitya? Now up to now what we saw is the awareness being the truth of all the objects, right? But what we haven't seen yet is the relationship of awareness with time and space. That is something which still needs to be examined. And this is where Vedanta has its own methods, way before Adi Shankaracharya talks about in Taittiriya Upanishad Bhasham and in many places, the relationship of awareness with time and space. And what is happening is the discoveries of physics are actually converging with what our tradition has been saying for longest time. So the classical physics thought that the time and space was absolute and everything else existed within time and space. So that itself was like one absolute reality and not changing. Then there came the whole big paradigm shift with Albert Einstein, where he said that time and space itself is relative. Now that was a huge thing. So that means there is no absoluteness in time and space either. So we will not go into what Einstein said, but let's go into what Vedanta is saying. Okay? So how is it that the time and space is relative? We had a method of showing the relativeness of time and space by saying, using a simple method. Simple method is that, suppose I ask you, what is the time now? Oh God, it's 9. Okay. Oh God, okay. So that means it's way past what I was expecting. Okay. So that means, suppose you say it 9 hours. Right. So that means, now how did it become 9? 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. So in fact it's 1 hour. Then you add and it becomes 9. Right? Now this 1 hour, so that means itself is what? 60 minutes. So after 60 minutes it gets a new name called hour. Now this 60 minute, 1 minute itself is 60 seconds. What does it mean after 60 seconds? It becomes, we give it a yet another name called minute. 1 second. Microsecond, nanosecond. Just as it happens with reference to objects, forms, there are tangible objects. But when you look into it, it becomes what? Just forms within forms within forms. Even time is the same story. That given time is going on reducing in infinite further divisions. And you can't ultimately come to the building block of time, just as you can't come to the building block of any object. So therefore, again, there is no unit which is the building block of time. What? There is the knowledge and power from which the tiniest unit comes, and it organizes in a certain sequence to make you see the hour. Then hour itself gets organized to become a day. The day itself gets organized to become year, month. Month itself organizes to become a year. Year into centuries, yugas. So that means here it all seems really huge. But when you look into it, it all just kind of what? Collapses into Ishvara. There is a beautiful temple in India which is worshipping Ishvara as time. That is Kalahasti. What is the temple? There is a temple. You know? You are from the south. Where is Kaliman? You don't know? There is a temple, Kalahasti. Kalahasti. It should be. Yeah. So that means here you are looking upon Ishvara in form of time. This is the Vedic understanding, that even time is a manifestation of Ishvara. What about space? As we saw yesterday, space is not something that you can actually, or you can see. It is something which is, in time and space, everything exists, but it's not something which is available for your perception as such. But what we do is, we use the space in order to figure out the distance. What does it mean? That I occupy this point in space and Rajashik occupies that point in space. And then what do? That 2 points we use in order to have the idea of distance. And that's why we also can tell what is exactly the distance between Earth and the Sun. What is the distance between Sun and the Moon? So that means that distance, what is the distance between Milky Way galaxy and some other galaxy? The scientists, the minds of scientists, where they reach, it's incredible. So therefore, distance is what? Distance is in space, right? One thing occupies this space, the other one occupies that space, and our understanding, how do we use spaces to understand the distances. Okay? So now, suppose I ask you, what is the distance between me and Rajashik? Suppose you say 1 meter. It's not, but let's say. Now this 1 meter itself is what? 100 centimeters. Then 1 centimeter is how many millimeters? 10. 1 millimeter again it goes on. It goes on, and again you can't find a building block. What is the final unit? Again it collapses in Ishvara, knowledge and power, which brings about the tiniest unit and then organizes all the way to become 1 meter. Now the 1 meter organizes to become what? 10 meters, 100 meters, then what? Then so very far distances.
1 light year,
1 light year.
then millions of light years.
It's mind-boggling. The whole Jagat is incredible. On one hand, so much precision and so much you can do with this Jagat. But when you look into it, everything collapses in Ishvara. So that means now what is yet another thing that you have to understand is any finite distance, right, 1 meter, has points. And how many points? Infinite points. So that means you cannot divide. So what does it mean? You divide this point and this point, you'll come here, then here, and you can go on and on and on. So that means that is yet another wonder. How from infinite points came finite distance. This is all math. This is not Vedanta, but this is what you use it to understand the Ishvara. So this is what you say, that Ishvara is not only the truth of object, it is also the truth of time and space. And because it is the truth of time and space, it is not within time and space, and that's why it becomes eternal. Eternal means that which is not subject to time. The definition of eternal is not long period. Suppose when you are waiting for somebody for coffee, and he said, "I've been waiting for you eternally." So is it eternal? No, it's not eternal. So it only means long time. And even long time, what you mean is all relative. Sometimes 5 minutes is a long time for you. Sometimes 10 minutes is a long time for you. So in my class, so I'm late because Indians are always late. No, not Indians, I am always late. I have to be precise. So I'm always late by 5-10 minutes. Now the Germans, they get all. And I'm like, no, I'm on time, very much on time. So that means there is a relative perception, right? So that means, now Anna is laughing because she says, I'm not like that.
No, I'm laughing because I'm German and I come late, and the Indians are irritated because I come late.
So she's better than me. Okay. So that means what happens is your idea of time, right, itself is relative, right? So now that's not what we are talking about. The whole thing is something which we say, the whole world, that eternity does not mean long time. This is why you can't experience that. Why? Because any experience that you are going to have is in time. And you can, that which is truth of time is not confined within a finite unit of time. You can only understand it with pramana, with the use of pramana, the relationship of Satchidananda Atma with everything else. You have to use the pramana and you have to create appropriate vrittis which understands exactly the relationship between awareness and everything else. That's called knowledge. Okay, fast.
Isn't the example of the space created by unlimited points a good analogy also for the forms which are created of infinity, like by Ishvara?
What? Sorry,
Well, you
sorry.
pointed out that
Yes.
the limited space is created by infinite points.
Yes.
And I thought this would be also a good analogy to the forms which we perceive, which are created by infinity.
Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, I see what she means. She says that all knowledge and all power, which itself is whatever, and then it kind of appears as a limited form. That's a good, it's true.
Would it be accurate to make an analogy between time and matter? So just as we say matter cannot be created or destroyed in this context, neither can time, and therefore you have cyclical time in Indian philosophy.
Excellent.
So it doesn't go linear, it's just kind of like the sun rises and sets,
Okay, that's a very important point that Namita is making. This whole thing of, this is excellent, let me use it. Now, you guys are too smart, so I can't stop. And maybe I'll have to finish. I'm already thinking how will I finish everything, but I can't unfortunately let go these kind of good points. I have to explain. Okay, what Namita is saying is something which is very important. When anybody listens to Vedanta, they all have this question, right? What is the first question is, first karma. When was the first karma? Right? So that means, because that karma itself is what that you are experiencing. The body itself is a result of what? Karma. So when was the first karma? You can't do a karma without a body. Do you understand? So that means these kind of questions are like, what came first? Did the egg come first or chicken come first? Did the seed come first or the tree come first? Similar questions. Did the father come first or the son come first? All these questions, people think, this is the thing, when people ask these questions, they think they are so smart, they are catching Vedanta. Actually, these are the commonest questions, right? Everybody asks, including me, everybody asks these questions. So that means, these questions, as Namita says, this presupposed, you want to find first. And what, not only here, but here, you'll never find first. Because why? In order for the father to be there, what the huh?
It has to be the first.
Exactly. Right? And the son himself, so that means who's the first father? The father cannot be, the father has to be a son first, then becomes a father. Right? So that means that the chicken, the egg cannot come first, because the egg itself comes from chicken. The seed cannot come first because the seed itself comes from the tree. Do you understand? So that means what we need to understand is what Namita is saying. That all these questions come from linear understanding of time. When you have linear understanding of time, you want to find the first. Right? And when you want to find the first, you can't find it anywhere. So this is why the way time is looked upon is what we call cyclical time. Beginningless, anadi. Anadi means without any beginning. What does it mean? That suppose, so what it means is, there is a time, space, and object when they become manifest, we call it Jagat, we call it the universe. What was there before that? The unmanifest, as we saw. But the unmanifest itself came from the manifest. Then that itself became unmanifest. So this is what we call cyclical nature of creation. You don't have linearity. So therefore, what is first is not the question, because the very understanding, and this is why it's very important that Ishvara, which is manifesting as time, space and object, survives the this. It precedes that. You understand? So suppose even if the whole universe collapses, everything is not come to an end. What has happened? Knowledge and power, which was manifest, will become unmanifest. So it has not lost its capacity. It is not everything is gone. Then it can again become manifest in another cycle of creation. So this is why you can't answer these questions, because the world is not linear. It is cyclical in nature. So this is why Ishvara survives everything and it manifests and unmanifests. This is why, if you actually think about it, suppose you are caught as an object. When will it end? It will never end. You become unmanifest, then again you become manifest again. Even if the whole universe resolves, that your causal is in unmanifest form, then again it will manifest in the universe, when again yet another cycle of manifestation begins. This is called samsara. Please don't use this samsara is a huge understanding that I am caught in these cycles of creation. Living is not called samsara. That I am caught in these cycles of creation, there is no way to get out of it, because my causal, the potential, remains through cycles of creation. The only way to get out of it is, I ask, am I this or am I not this? That the day that you discover, I'm not this, but I'm that which is, there is one thing which is making the whole unmanifest, manifest, unmanifest, manifest possible, which is Ishvara. And Ishvara has its truth, which is awareness, and that is actually the reality of everything. Time, space, objects, cycles, everything. That is called limitlessness. That is called knowledge. The magnitude of this understanding is mind-boggling. Where we started and where pramana takes you. We are not talking about some simple reality, oh, I'm observing this, I'm observing that. That's rubbish. So that is what we call, thank you, Namita, for breaking this out. This is yet another adds one whole big dimension to this teaching. Thank you.
While we are saying it's a non-linearity thing.
Yes.
We don't know how the beginning happened.
So that means there is no question. So as I said, suppose this event that scientists call Big Bang. Right? So they ask this question before Big Bang, but that perception cannot go there, that inference cannot go there, so it is inaccessible. But what Vedanta says is, you have an effect, it can't be without a cause. So where was the cause? It was there, knowledge and power, but in the unmanifest. Right? So that means, then that cause which is unmanifest now, was manifest some other time. So this is why you have endless cycles of creation. This is why we have a word called anadi. You remember that avidya. Avidya is anadi. Why? Because it is with Ishvara's capacity to manifest. There is another capacity which is to wait. So you can't give it a beginning. So that's why even for avidya I said, suppose you say, when did avidya begin? Same question. So suppose you postulate it began here, the opposite of avidya has to be there, which is vidya, then it cannot begin. So in anything that you ask a linear question, you will get into a problem. And the only way to answer is that linearity is our presupposition. Actually the world is cyclical in nature. Yeah?
But even time is a mind. We made creation for convenience, just to measure things. As you said that, like meter is to separate to measure something in space, time is the same. It's just for convenience to
Yeah.
measure.
But the thing is, see, one thing we have to be very careful. Everything is not made by men. What? There is Ishvara there. Don't take everything as like we made it. No. That means there is something called time and space. There is something called objects. This is the appearance, and this is why we are not calling everything subjective. Don't get into that. Because otherwise what will happen, everything we are doing for our convenience, I am calling this, there is a form, and there is a form, and that you are given the eyes to see the forms. You are able to interact with it. So that is what we call Vyavaharika reality. It's not Pratipansika. It's not your own creation. Right? So in fact, we look into the universe. The scientists, when they look into the universe, they find light years and all. So that means we are studying how the universe is, and we are giving names to it. But it's not like we are only creating for our own convenience. No. So that means that there is this whole Ishvara and the design within which all this is possible. Is it clear?
Day before, you had talked about the concept of the unmanifest and the manifest here and now, that the interplay goes on.
Yes.
If that is the case, which actually was an amazing concept for me, then what is the need for this cycle, this massive cycle of creation and destruction, if everything actually is happening at any given point of time?
Yeah, but because even there is, there is an event which is the manifest. This is why you have Maya, right? See, any manifestation, it has to, within manifest and unmanifest, it's right. But before the whole thing manifested, there is an event called Big Bang. So what was there? That's the question. And there was something which is what we call, it cannot be without a cause, because there is an effect, it cannot be without a cause. And that cause, how was it? If it was there, then why was there not manifestation? So then you have to reply by saying it was in a potential form. Now what is the proof that it was in a potential form? That not only was then, but it is also now. Right? This is the way to understand it. So that means, if I just told you that, but if it was not happening now, it would remain a belief. But that is also true now. This is what makes Vedanta into knowledge. Knowledge, because whatever I am explaining, whether I am talking about awareness, or I am talking about all knowledge and power, or I am talking about the manifestation and unmanifestation, and I am talking about form, all of that is here and now. But it is in a certain sequence. And if you do not, then what will happen? There are lots and lots of issues, because your all knowledge and all power came with time and space. It will become limited to time and space. Do you understand? One deviation from this model and everything will collapse. Because your Ishvara will become only within time and space. It has to precede time and space. So you need that potential. You can't only look at the world like this, because when did knowledge and power come? Did it come as a result of Big Bang, or did it precede? These are the questions which are critical to answer. And if it came with it, then what is the cause of that? You understand the logical problems that you get in if you try to mess with pramana. Yes.
Maybe this is a question for Surya, I don't know. So here's the logic. What came first is presupposing linearity. Okay, so we excluded that. So time is cyclical. So how do we now tie this in with the concept, because we talked about it a few days ago, evolution? Because evolution implies a certain beginning. For example, Homo sapiens onto humans.
This is something very easy, right? This is something easy, because this manifestation that we have within one time is not like it's constantly changing through cause and effect relationships. So it's constantly under flux. So that means when you look at this manifest universe, 100 years ago was not the same as today. That is called evolution, right? Thousands of years ago was not same as today. So that is what we study, how the world moved, and this is what we call evolution. You study a given way, how things evolved, and that doesn't contradict what this is saying, right? It follows a certain cause and effect relationship, and it also is something which is flux, in flux.
It might be also because it's all knowledge and power. Because it's all knowledge and all power, it has the capacity to evolve.
Absolutely. And this is what I said, the 100 years from now, what is going to happen, you don't know, but within knowledge and power, there is a capacity to manifest what is 100 years from now, right? So then things are evolving, and that's nothing big about it. Surya, you want to answer it differently?
Is it clear? I'm not thinking.
Okay.
Maybe I'll take it.
Okay, no, tell me, just...
No, so maybe just to the same questions. I think there are two parts to the question. One is, how did all of it start?
Yes.
The way we had to approach that, we are saying unmanifested become manifested.
Excellent.
And evolution is, once manifestation happened, the motions that it goes through is the evolution.
Excellent.
No, but within also the forms of life, some are unmanifest, but it's all there, right? The capacity to see.
You still have more potentials, which is still
Which are collapsed.
And then there is this genetic laws and all this environmental pressure to make this organism adapt and so on. So that is also within Ishvara. So here also you tap in the unmanifest, which is there itself. It's not at the beginning of only of the creation. Here itself, over millions and billions of years, the life forms evolve, right? It's a beauty. So you can really very well reconcile this evolution of life forms. And Ishvara bring there so much Ishvara.
One argument is also that manifestation and manifestation is here and now in every single moment. For
Yes.
example, breathing in, breathing out, there's always a moment of unmanifestation, and day and night, and all these things.
Sure.
It's also an argument.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. $25?
Yes.
Okay. Atmanaha samchidamshascha buddhehe vrittihi iti dvayam sanyojya cha avivekena janami iti pravartate. Who wants to read this?
The notion of I know arises because of the mixing up of both the aspects of the self, existence, consciousness, and the thought, modification of the mind.
Okay. What it says is, how does this, this entity, that is the individual, how does it come about, right? Because we all live in this world, no matter how clever you live in this world as what? With your eye sense. What is this eye sense? Aham janami. Here it is said, aham janami, I know. But that can be extended to I do, I think, I experience. Right? Now, this I know, I do, I think, I experience. What is there? What this verse is saying is, there are two parts. One is I sense, which belongs to the mind, which is designed in a way that it is able to do these functions. right? So I say, I see the sky, it is blue. I see the Ganga, which is so beautiful. I experience the cold of Ganga, and I'm shaking and I'm holding Anne's hand. All these are what is going through my mind, right? In this, there is one thing which is a thought related to what I'm doing, this I sense. I'm now holding somebody's hand, now I'm looking at the sun, now I'm feeling the cold. There is this thought. And there is one more thing in the thought, which is the content of the thought. What is it without which, this is what Surya was doing in the meditation this morning, without which this thought is not possible. And what is the content of the thought? Awareness. So that means 1 second I'm experiencing the sun goes away, so the thought of the sun goes away, the thought of Ganga comes. So these thoughts are changing, but what I have done is, I have taken myself to be the thought, and what I have done is, I have missed out the content, which is the awareness. So this is what it says, that all this is possible because of two things. Thought is possible because of awareness, but awareness doesn't become thought. Because if it became the thought, it can't become another thought.
Or if it became one aspect of knower, if it became the knower, it cannot then become the doer, or the singer, or the eater, or the walker.
So that means there are two things. One is thought, and the other one is awareness. What happens? We take thought to be the final reality. There are no real two things. What is the relationship between thought and awareness? Satya Mithya relationship. What is the Satya Mithya relationship? Awareness is independent of being a thought. And while the thought entirely depends upon awareness for its existence, without which it can't take this given form. Either it is sun or tree or Ganga or whatever it is. So this is what the verse is saying. We see this, and in this relationship we miss out.
So Neema, we can say that awareness is seer of being. So the nature of seer is awareness.
So please, this is a very big thing. Please don't say your second sentence is right, your first sentence is not right. What if you say, now you tell me, awareness, what is the problem when you say awareness is seer of everything?
Given an attribute,
it becomes a doer, then doer is finite, it does one thing, it doesn't do the second thing. You understand? So then, what else? What else did you say?
It becomes limited in time and
Absolutely.
space.
It becomes limited. Every action of doing takes place in time and space, limited to time and space.
And it is related to something which is in time and space also.
Exactly. I'm doing something in time and space. It also gets related to something else. Right? I'm doing something. Do you understand? Even this is why I talk about precision in talking. Precision in talking means because you are totally changing the meaning. You can say, so what? I've used Drik Drishya Viveka and I've come to the point that awareness is the final doer. You are changing the whole Vedanta by doing that. You are making that which is limitless into a finite thing. We don't understand the implication. It seems like, what's the big deal? This is how the teaching has deteriorated over a period of time. This amazing teaching tradition has become loose. People just express it. They think they are very smart. That's why sticking to pramana is critical. Your mind cannot reach the final reality on your own. So work with pramana. Don't be over smart. You do so much disservice. You change the whole meaning. everything, then what happens? You pass it on to somebody else, they will add their own story. Disaster. So that means you have to try to understand what the meanings and be precise. This precision in your understanding is something which is so important. Okay. So that means, where is the doer? So let me come back to your question. So that means you can't say the awareness is the doer of everything, right? The doing the action of seeing. Because if it constantly does the action of seeing, it can't do something else. In whose presence? This is why you have to say differently. What do you have to say? In whose presence all the activities take place, itself is unchanging reality, without any attributes, and free from any either time, space or object, but without which nothing can happen. You understand? This is a precise way of expressing it. Yeah? So doing is only for individuals, not for awareness. Yes? Atmanaha vikriya nasti buddhehe bodhaha na jatu iti jivaha sarvamalam jnatva jnata drashta iti muhyati. Okay. Who wants to say? Vaishali.
There is no modification for the self and for the buddhi. There is no capacity to know as it is inert. Yet the jiva, individual, not knowing all this, thinks I am the knower and the seer is thus deluded.
Okay. Similar idea taken from doer to knower, right? So suppose you say, I know Atma. Who is doing the action of knowing? Huh? The doer. Exactly, right? The mind is doing, the doer is doing the action of knowing. Is Atma doing the action of knowing? No. Atma is always what it is. So that means, just as doer is a result of what? Thought and the content. Even the knower is a result of what we saw. Anything that you want to know will have vritti gnanam. What is a vritti gnanam? If you want to know a given thing, a thought of that has to arise in your mind. Right? If you want to know the flower, the physical flower doesn't enter you. The mind creates a corresponding thought, which is what we call vritti gnanam. So that means any knowing also involves two things. A thought. That thought, in that thought there is awareness. So what is the variable? So that means right now to know a flower, there is a flower thought. What is the relationship between flower thought and awareness? Flower thought, which is a particular thought, cannot exist without awareness. But even after flower thought goes and you want to know something else, awareness is always there. So that means every activity, I am the doer, I am the knower, we think it's one entity. That's a final entity. In every entity there is one part which is mithya, variable, and in the same there is one which is invariable, which is awareness. This is why there is no physical distance between anything and awareness. So if you're trying to separate awareness from everything else, then what happens? Awareness becomes just yet another object in time and space, what separated in distance. Do you understand? Then again it becomes one finite thing which is within time and space, away from everything else. So therefore, this is what we again call that doer, knower, all of this, what? So what he is calling inert. In this, please don't imagine something inert. So this is a prakriya which is used and it's a very common prakriya, that everything else is jada. Jada is inert, and only awareness is conscious or aware, right? So everything is jada. Does it mean that everything has no consciousness? No. Right? Because we saw when there is satya mithya relationship, wherever there is mithya, there is satya. Right? So please don't call the jagat. This is now, teachers teach like this. Whole jagat is jada. And awareness is the only thing which is the thing of light. Now, so that means there are two realities again. So this is what jada, and it is lighted up by awareness. Is it true? No. What it means is thought cannot exist without awareness, but awareness after that thought goes continues to exist. So that means there is a dependency. So that is what is meant by jada. It doesn't mean that it is something which is jada as such, right? And it is then lighted up by awareness. Stefan.
But when you say knower, there's a object which is known plus the I thought, right?
Okay, excellent. So now what Stefan is doing is adding one more nuance, and that is very nice. Good, thank you. Very good. So yesterday I think Vimal had asked, so what happens is that suppose there is a knowing of a pot. There are, even within the mind, there are two operations. As though, what is the first operation? This is pot, right? This is what you know. And the second thought, which is also within the mind, what I see. Right? So generally what happens is we use Vedanta to become this. This is not you. This is also the thought. This is a corresponding thought. Right? Both belong to the mind, and that which sustains both is awareness. And it is free from both. This is why pot can be replaced with flower, and the knower can be replaced with doer. All of these activities happen here, and this is free. Thank you, Stefan. Nice. Okay. Now, Rajju Sarpavat Atmanam Jivam Jnatva Bhayam Bahet Na aham jivaha paramatma iti jnanaha chet nirbhayaha bhavet. Who wants to read?
Just as one who takes a rope as a snake, the one who takes the self as a jiva is overcome by fear. I am not a jiva, but the Supreme Self. If he knows this, he becomes fearless.
Okay. So that means this is what we call this is an adhyasa. So just as one takes rope as a snake, now, so we take ourselves, what is here, what is equivalent to a snake here? Jiva, right? What is the reality? What is the reality? Huh? Okay, well, let's first take example and then put it with reference to the final. So what is there is rope, and what is taken as snake. Now there is some mithyatvam, because unless there was a rope you will not see the snake, but actually a rope has never become the snake, but it gives you an appearance of a snake, right? That's the example. Now if you want to use this example, then what is snake equivalent? Jiva. You see yourself as a limited individual. And this limited individual jiva is a very specific name which means what? The physical, subtle and causal. The one who travels from one place to the other over different births. Right? Now, where you see Jiva, what is the reality? What is equivalent of a rope?
I am
the self. Right? So that means this is a real reality, but what you see it is Jiva. So that means until, suppose you see a snake and you don't question whether it is snake or not, what will you do? All your actions will, I see the snake, so then I'll have fear, then I want to run away. All your actions are based on the perception that there is a snake. And everything that you do is rational, because rational with reference to your perception. Now, within this paradigm, you want to be fearless. Then somebody will come and say, oh, snake, it doesn't matter, it will not bite, change your religion. So everything that we try to do is within keeping this as a reality and find all our solutions. The one thing which actually makes us question whether am I snake, is there a snake in the first place or it is something else, that we never do. So Vedanta makes you go further. Within Jiva you have Sukha, Dukha, you go and attend 100 workshops, how to free yourself, attend a workshop, how to be compassionate, attend a workshop, how to keep my body healthy, how to be successful, how to have good communication, all of this. And it's okay, there's no problem, right? But at the same time, it confirms this.
Confirms and perpetuates.
It confirms and perpetuates this. It may be necessary for you to do that then becomes karma yoga. You do it with a different attitude. That, hey, I need to fix all of this in order to get there. That then becomes a totally different pursuit altogether. But in itself, suppose then what happens? It confirms Jiva. So this is why yesterday his thing, hey Jiva, I'm going to squeeze moksha.
Some moksha. Some moksha.
Some moksha. Not moksha, but some moksha.
Oh, really?
Finite moksha.
I heard, why would you go for some? Why wouldn't you go for the whole?
If you want to overshoot.
See, he's very practical. So therefore, this is what we call that either you work within this, and that's okay, right? Or you, so that means if there is an adhyasa, what is the point? If this itself is an adhyasa, there are two things here. There is avidya, you don't know what is here. That is called avidya. You don't know rope as a rope, but that avidya leads to adhyasa, superimposition. In place of a rope, you see a snake. Every solution that you find is within adhyasa. And you never attack avidya. As long as you don't attack avidya, you can never fundamentally solve the problem. So here it is the same. You don't know, there is avidya of Atma, you don't know the nature of Atma, and there is an adhyasa. What kind of an adhyasa? I take myself to be this limited physical body, subtle body and causal body. And within this reality, I try to find all solutions. So all the solutions that you find are within your adhyasa. Now what Vedanta says is, if you really want to solve this problem, you attack avidya. Because every other solution is going to be relative. You can solve it, but it is within relative world. So this is what is this verse. Okay? Now, let me do couple more, and then, but there is also Gita, so maybe I should stop. Yeah, maybe I'll stop here, because there is Gita chanting going on. We'll get some grace from Lord.
Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.